A siren wailed somewhere behind us, and in that split second, right there under the harsh border floodlights, I realized two things at once. One, we were pushing a dead car toward the U.S. gates like the world's dumbest parade float. And two, I had a tiny plastic dish on my keychain with the sad, crumbled leftovers of old joints in it, sitting in my purse like a little time bomb. And the officer was already walking our way. If you like stories where one no-big-deal decision turns into a full-blown midnight heart-in-your-throat disaster, you're in the right place. And hey, if you end up enjoying this, please tap subscribe and like. It helps more than you think. Some days, boredom is a physical thing. It's not a feeling, it's a weather system. It rolls in and sits right on your chest. Alan was stretched out on Greg's couch, half watching some late-morning TV rerun with the volume too low, like he didn't want us to know he liked Bewitched. Greg was pacing. Greg always paced when he was thinking, and he was always thinking. He had big ideas and no patience, like a cat in a cardboard box. And Greg's girlfriend, Lucky, she was flipping through a little stack of postcards she'd bought somewhere and never mailed. Mexico beaches, neon signs, donkeys painted like zebras. Lucky looked up and said, like she had just solved a problem, "Let's go to Tijuana." Alan's head lifted an inch. Today? Yeah, right now. She snapped her fingers. Day trip, food, shopping. We'll be back before anyone even notices we're gone. Greg stopped pacing. His eyes lit up the way they did when he smelled a good time coming. Border's easy, he said. We'll just roll through. Alan sat up more. We got gas money? Greg patted his pockets theatrically. We've always got cash. Lucky pointed at me like I was the deciding vote. You in? They really didn't even bother asking me. They all knew that if a good time was to be had, I was there. And just like that, we were moving. The drive was the best kind of reckless. Windows cracked, hot air whipping through the car, the radio hunting for stations like it was sniffing out freedom. Alan drummed on the dashboard. Greg talked a mile a minute about what he was going to buy. A leather belt, maybe a silver ring, maybe a whole new personality if the price was right. Lucky leaned forward between the seats and said, I want a straw hat, a ridiculous one. Like I'm a movie star who can't cook. I remember the way the road kept sliding toward the horizon and how the closer we got, the more the day felt like it belonged to us, like we'd stolen it. Back then, the border had a different energy. Still serious, still official, but not wrapped in the same tight, modern tension. The lines moved, people joked. Cars rolled forward, stopped, rolled forward again. When it was our turn, the officer asked the usual questions, eyes moving from face to face like a metronome. Where are you headed? Tijuana, Alan said casually. How long you staying? Just the day, Greg said. The officer glanced at us a moment longer, then waved us through. And just like that, like crossing a seam in a piece of fabric, we were in. Lucky threw up her hands in triumph. See? Easy. Greg laughed. Told you. Alan looked at me like, you see? No big deal. And I smiled because I believed them. For exactly, 3 hours? Tijuana hits you like color, like noise, like 1,000 tiny decisions happening at once. There were vendors calling out from every direction. The air was thick with grilled meat and exhaust and dust. Music spilled out of doorways. A man tried to sell Alan a sombrero the size of a satellite dish. We ate first because the smell of food is basically a leash. We found a place with plastic chairs and bright tablecloths. A waiter who moved like he was late to his own life brought us plates that sizzled when they landed. Carne asada, warm tortillas, beans that tasted like somebody's grandmother had supervised them. We ate like we'd never seen food before. Lucky bit into something and moaned dramatically. Okay, I would live here for this. Greg raised his cup like a toast. To spontaneous plans. Alan clinked his glass against mine. To not being bored. And for a while, it was perfect. The kind of day you think you'll remember forever. And you do, but not for the reasons you expect. After food came shopping. Of course it did. We wandered into little stalls and shops, packed tight with leather bags, woven baskets, silver jewelry, cheap sunglasses, tiny painted ceramics that looked like they'd been made by someone's patient hands. Lucky tried on hat after hat, each one bigger and more absurd. Greg bargained over a belt like it was a hostage negotiation. Alan bought me a silver and turquoise bracelet, a cuff that the seller had made himself. And then he found a marionette. You know those puppets with strings and a control thing at the top? Which, at the time, felt like a very normal thing to purchase. And the whole time, none of us said the sentence that would have saved us. Hey, where did we park? Because parking is boring, and we were allergic to boredom. By late afternoon, the sun started to tilt and the shadows got longer and sharper. We had wandered far from where we had started. The city had folded us into itself and carried us along like a current. Streets blurred together, corners repeated. Every storefront started to look like a cousin of the last one. Finally, Greg patted his pockets and said, "All right, time to go." Alan nodded, suddenly practical. "Yeah, let's head back." Lucky adjusted her ridiculous hat like a queen preparing to exit her kingdom. "Okay, where's the car?" And that's when we all looked at each other. Not in panic yet, not fully, just a quiet, dawning blankness. Greg's smile flickered. "It's back this way." Alan pointed. "No, it was over there." Lucky turned in a slow circle like the car might reveal itself by magic. "Guys," I said carefully, "what street did we park on?" Silence. It was the kind of silence that makes you nervous. Greg tried to laugh it off. Okay. No big deal. We'll find it." Alan nodded too quickly. "Yeah, we'll just walk back." So we walked. At first it was almost funny, like a game, like hide and seek with a vehicle. We retraced what we thought were our steps. We argued about landmarks. "That blue sign," Alan insisted. "That wasn't blue, it was green," Greg said. Lucky swore she remembered trees with white trunks. Greg thought he remembered a mural with a horse. I kept scanning the buildings for something familiar, a sign, a sticker, an advertisement we passed without noticing. But the city was busy doing city things. Cars came and went, streets shifted into new streets. The light changed and made everything unfamiliar. And the funny part? The whole time we were so sure the car would just appear around the next corner. Until it didn't. Dusk slid in like someone dimming a lamp. The air cooled. The crowds thinned a little, but the noise didn't. Night brought its own energy. More neon, more music, more movement that felt less like families and more like trouble. Greg stopped at a corner and looked around, the confidence draining out of him. "Okay, we should have found it by now." Lucky's voice sharpened. "Do you remember which lot?" Alan rubbed his face with both hands. "I remember parking." I tried to keep my tone light, but it came out tight. "We've been walking for hours." Greg's jaw worked. "We'll ask." So we started asking. We asked vendors, we asked shopkeepers, we asked a guy leaning on a wall who looked like he'd been leaning there since the beginning of time. But what do you even say? "Excuse me, have you seen a random American car parked somewhere in this entire city?" People shrugged. Some smiled politely. Some laughed like we were telling a joke. Finally, we found a payphone and realized another problem. None of us had written down anything useful. No addresses, no lot names, no cross streets. Just vibes. Lucky's hat suddenly seemed less funny. We kept walking. My feet started to ache. Then they started to burn. Alan tried to reassure us. It's gotta be near where we ate. Greg snapped. Where we think we ate. Lucky muttered, I swear to God, if we spend the night here because you two can't remember a parking spot. I didn't answer. I was busy doing that thing where your brain starts imagining every worst-case scenario, one after another, like flipping through a terrifying photo album. It got properly dark. Streetlights flicked on, neon signs buzzed. The air smelled like night food and cigarette smoke and something sharper underneath. We finally stumbled into a parking area, more of a rough lot, lined with cars that all looked slightly wrong. Alan walked up and down the rows, scanning. Greg leaned on his hands, breathing hard. Okay, this is insane. Lucky's voice had gone quiet. I'm done being adventurous. And then, like a miracle that didn't deserve us, there! Alan shouted. He pointed, and there it was. Our car. Sitting under a dim light like it had been waiting patiently the whole time, like it hadn't just shaved years off our lives. We all surged toward it at once. Greg slapped the hood like he was greeting an old friend. Lucky laughed, half relief, half hysteria. I felt my knees go weak. Alan fumbled for the keys, triumphant. See? Told you. Do not told you me, Lucky snapped, but she was smiling again. We piled in like survivors. Alan turned the key. The engine coughed again, then sputtered into life. Ha! Greg said. It's fine. Alan grinned and put it in gear. We rolled out of the lot, and I remember the way the city lights slid past the windows like we were escaping a dream. We found the route back toward the border by pure instinct and luck, following signs and other cars like fish following a current. By the time we hit the line, it was late, midnight late. The border area was all floodlights and concrete and long shadows. The world looked washed out like it had been bleached. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, Alan's car stalled. Right there, in the line, the engine died with a little shudder, like a tired animal giving up. Alan turned the key. Click, click, nothing. He tried again. Nothing. Greg's eyes went wide. No, 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 no! Lucky whispered, You have got to be kidding me. The car behind us honked. Alan hissed while he turned the key. Come on, come on. Nothing. The officer up ahead looked toward us, posture shifting into alert. Greg slapped the seat. Start! The horn behind us blared again, longer this time. And then the officer started walking towards us, hand lifting in a move it gesture. Alan threw open his door. Okay, we push. We all spilled out into the cold night air. The car behind us kept honking like it was personally offended. Greg and Alan went to the back, Lucky and I went to the sides. The officer called out, What's going on? Car died, Alan shouted back. We're moving it. The officer looked unimpressed, but he waved another guard over, and for a second I thought they might help. They did not help. They watched. We pushed. The car rolled forward slowly, heavy and stubborn. My shoes scraped the pavement. My arms shook with effort. Greg grunted. Keep it rolling, keep it rolling. Lucky's hat flew off her head and tumbled across the ground, ridiculous even in crisis. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. We shoved the car forward, inch by inch, through the gate line, under the lights. with the officers chuckling while they watched, like we were a cautionary tale. Somewhere outside in the dark, a dog barked, high and sharp. And then the officer at the checkpoint motioned Alan forward. Alan jogged back to the driver's window, breathless, sweaty, trying to look normal. The officer leaned down. "Where are you coming from?" "Tijuana," Alan said. The officer's gaze slid over all of us, sweaty, disheveled, wide-eyed. "How long were you there?" "Just the day," Greg said quickly. The officer looked at me and my stomach dropped. "Ma'am, can I look through your purse?" And here's the thing. In that moment, I wanted to be cooperative. We were already a mess. The car was dead. We were sweaty and exhausted. The last thing I wanted was to look suspicious. So I nodded, too fast. "Sure." I handed it over. And immediately, I remembered that damn keychain. That little plastic dish attached to my keys. The one I'd tossed on there weeks ago thinking it was harmless. A little later stash of crumbs and ends that didn't matter. It mattered now. The officer opened my purse under the light. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. Wallet, brush, random receipts. Then he saw the keys and he lifted them. The little dish swung like a pendulum. He turned it, opened it. His face didn't change much, but the air around him changed. He looked up at me. "What is this?" My mouth went dry. It's nothing. Greg made a sound like he was trying not to choke. Lucky stared at the ground like if she didn't look, it wouldn't be real. The officer stepped back and motioned with 2 fingers, sharp. "Secondary." And just like that, our night fell off a cliff. They guided us to a side area under brighter lights. We were told to wait. The car sat there like a crime scene, silent and dead, as if it was pretending it had nothing to do with us. We were ushered into an office space that smelled like old coffee and paperwork. "Sit," an officer said. So we sat. A plastic bench, cold air, harsh fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty. No one spoke for a moment. Then Greg whispered, "We are so screwed." Lucky's voice was thin. "I told you we should have left earlier." Alan's hands were clasped so tight his knuckles were pale. "Just don't say anything extra, okay?" I stared at my own hands, trying to rewind time. Outside, through the walls, we could hear it. Dogs. Not just barking, dogs losing their minds. A sound of frenzy, scrabbling, yelps and sharp, excited growls that rose and fell like waves. Greg's eyes flickered to the door. "They're running dogs." Lucky swallowed. "On us?" Alan didn't answer. A minute later, an officer came back inside carrying something torn in half. He held it up like evidence in a courtroom. Alan's tape holder, ripped clean into 2 pieces, bite marks covering the entire thing. Alan blinked. "What?" The officer's voice was flat. "Dog alerted on this." Alan's face drained of color. It's just... Greg's whisper was vicious. "Alan!" Alan's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I used it to clean..." And there it was, the stupid truth. The residue, the leftovers, seeds and stems. The kind of invisible mistake you don't think about until a trained dog is screaming about it under floodlights. Lucky's eyes glistened, angry and scared. "We are idiots." My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my throat. We waited. More dogs outside. More muffled voices. Papers shuffling. Finally, 2 officers came in and stood over us like we were children who had broken a window. The older one looked at Alan. "You have anything else in the car?" Alan swallowed. No. The officer looked at me. This, he gestured toward my purse area, is drug paraphernalia. I started to speak, but no sound came out. The officer said something about consequences, about how things could go, about how we were lucky it was what it was and not something worse. Then he said the part that made my brain just glitch. He told us we could pay a cash fine right then and leave. $200. Alan's head snapped up. We don't. Greg cut in fast. We have it. We didn't, but Greg did. He always carried cash. Enough to get out of whatever scrape he might get into. The officer took it with a blank expression, like it was just another transaction. No receipt, no kindness. Just returned our IDs, returned the used roach clip that had been hanging on the car's rearview mirror, and pointed to the door. Go, he said. And we did. Fast. We walked out into the night feeling like we'd just escaped something that could have eaten our lives. The car, of course, was still dead, because why would the universe stop messing with us now? So we pushed it again, out of the secondary area, away from the lights, away from the officers. We pushed over to a public phone just outside of the border crossing area. At some point, Alan said, "We need a hotel." Greg laughed, but it was hollow. Yeah, no kidding. We found one nearby. Nothing fancy, just a place with a neon sign buzzing and a lobby that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. The clerk didn't care about our story. He cared about money and keys and that we didn't cause problems. We collapsed into the room like we'd been dropped from the sky. Lucky's ridiculous hat sat on a chair like a defeated mascot. Greg lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. We really pushed a car through the border. Alan's voice was muffled from his pillow. No shit. I sat on the edge of the bed, purse beside me like an accusation. Finally, Lucky spoke, softer now. You okay? I nodded, but it wasn't a real nod. It was the kind you do when you don't have words. Because what I wanted to say was, I won't forget that moment. The floodlights, the officer's hand lifting my keys, the tiny dish swinging, the sound of dogs going insane outside. I wanted to say something cool, but all I managed was, I'm sorry. Greg exhaled. We're all sorry. Alan sat up and looked at me, eyes tired. Hey, we got out. Lucky's voice was sharp again, but kinder. Yeah, we got out. And tomorrow, we fix the car and we go home, and we never do this again. We all knew that never was a strong word, but that night, it felt true. The next morning, the sun made everything look less dramatic, like the whole night had been a bad movie. We walked back to the car and used the payphone to call a tow truck. He took the car to a mechanic, and then we walked to a nearby diner. We ate breakfast in silence. No smart back and forth this morning. By late morning, the car sputtered back to life, and when we finally drove away, back toward familiar roads and familiar boredom, I felt something settle in me. A lesson, heavy and unwelcome. Adventure is fun, until it isn't. Careless is funny, until it's dangerous. And the border doesn't care you were just trying to have a good day. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you want more real-life stories with twists, troubles, and the kind of what were we thinking moments that stick with you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment with the wildest day trip gone wrong you've ever heard. I read them, and I'm probably not the only one who needs the reminder that we're all human. If you're a young person listening to this and anything in the story feels a little too familiar, feeling stuck, unsafe, pressured, or like you're one bad decision away from disaster, please don't carry it alone. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're in immediate danger, call 911. If you're outside the U.S., look up your country's crisis hotline or emergency number. There is help where you are, and you deserve support and safety. Until next time, take care of yourself, and please, write down where you parked.